Hello and welcome to Art Talks, a series of lectures to help you and your arts organization increase both your funding and your audience size. My name is Dan Brown, and we at the Capitol Theatre have been working with support from the Ontario Trillium Foundation to bring you the top local experts in their field to leave you with actionable insights, takeaways, and lessons that you can implement today.
Everybody has a story. Not everyone is interested in your story, especially the media. The media is interested only in what's the biggest, what's the smallest, what's provocative. They're interested in the winners and losers and nothing in between. But the irony about that and the sadness about that is that sometimes what's in between is far more enriching, far more alluring, far more mysterious, and in my point of view anyway, is far more interesting. And the whole point of working with the media, if you're an arts organization, is to get out and tell your story and to make that story interesting. And to believe in it and the whole idea that everyone has a story. But sometimes that story that you tell isn't the story that the media is interested in. And I'll give you an example. One time I had, when I was working at the Windsor Star, I had a person come from an organization from the University of Windsor who was interested in talking to the people who were doing entertainment. And she thought she might have a story that could be written about in the newspaper. So I introduced her to the entertainment editor, and she said, well, we've just hired 2 people at the university in the fine art department. And one of them has a PhD from Harvard and has written a number of papers that were published in journals all across the United States. The other person just recently got a PhD and is going to be teaching, and she named whatever the subject was. Well, the entertainment editor just had no interest in this. And so this woman walked away, and I followed her down the stairs and out to Ferry Street, and I said, I'm really sorry that they didn't seem to be all that interested. And she says, yeah, she says, I thought they would seriously be interested in this one fellow. And I said, why is that? She said, well, he does the sets, or he used to do the sets for the Rolling Stones. And I'm thinking, well, why wouldn't you tell that story? She said, well, I didn't think it was, I thought, the fact that he's got a PhD and he's published all these papers. No, the paper's not interested in that. So she had a story. This man has a story. But sometimes you convey the wrong story to the media. They're interested in the unusual and the unique. And I'll tell you another story. And this is a story that I pitched. I was pitching this to CanWest newspapers. The idea of going to Morocco, on a trip to Morocco. And their response was, well, we published a story about Morocco about 6 months ago, so we can't see ourselves doing another one. And I said, oh, that's really too bad, because the story that I was going to tell you about Morocco is how my wife and I were kidnapped. And right away, they were interested in the story. And the story went all across the CanWest newspapers. The idea is pitching your story, but know what story you're going to pitch. So what's next? Okay, have something to say, first of all. Something that's important, something that's unique, something that's different. And if you can do that, it doesn't matter. Once you catch their attention, they're going to be there to cover it. But it has to be unique and it has to be different. It has to be a little bit unusual. Otherwise, you're not going to get their attention. So something that's very important, something that's hugely critical. It means setting yourself apart. It means making your appeal in a broader based way. So sometimes it means looking at your market and thinking, well, I don't want to limit myself to just that market. I want this to appeal to a greater audience. It means providing greater quotes, colorful quotes. And I talk to journalism students and I talk to people in the media and say, you don't want the bland. You want the exciting. You want the scintillating. You want something that's going to stir people's emotions. And you want something sensational. If you have something sensational, then the media is right on your heels. They're going to listen. So it means selling your story. And that means knowing your audience. If you're in the arts, you have to, I don't want you to limit yourself to an arts audience, but you have to know what the audience is like in Windsor, if that's what you're looking for. The audience in Toronto is different. I went to a reading the other night at the Stephen Leacock Museum, and I immediately, within 10, 15 minutes of doing my reading there with three other writers, I knew my audience was a little bit different. So I tailored the poetry that I was reading to that audience. In Windsor, because I write about historical material, Windsor's past, I have certain audiences that I can go to, and I don't need a speech. I mean, I can just get up and talk because I know they're going to be interested in it. But other places in the country would not be interested in that. So you need to know your audience. You also need to know the media. So if you're pitching this to Tony Doucette, for example, from the morning show at CBC, you have to know what he likes. What does he favor? Listen to the show. Listen to the show and find out who he has on that show and what kind of material that he works with. Or Bob Steele in the afternoon. Look at what he's interested in. He's very keenly interested in music. So find out what kind of music he's interested in. So know your media. Know what he would be interested in. Know what the Windsor Star would be interested in. Read the paper, find out what they're publishing, what arts events they're more likely to cover. And also know why your story will make a splash. If you know why that's going to happen, you are going to make a splash. You are going to have some impact. So that's selling the story. The other thing about selling your story is finding an image. And when I talk about an image, I'm talking about branding. I'm talking about what is it that sets you apart from other organizations. Because if you know what that is, then you have a way of actually pitching that to the media. Because they're going to say, well, why would we cover your organization? Why would we cover your event? There's another event going on at the same time. And you've got to be ready to answer that question. Why cover my event? Because my event's the best event that represents this kind of music. Or my event is the best kind of event that represents, this kind of dance. And, or Bookfest, for example. Why would they cover Bookfest, this weekend when the International Festival of Films is happening? So you have to have a way of selling it as an image, and you need to make people believe what you're saying. So you have to be credible, and you need to make the media care that what you're doing is important, that it's really important, that if they don't cover it, they're missing something. So, making people believe. I mean, this is the branding. Right now we got Donald Trump, make America great again. Well, it's not exactly a very original slogan. Ronald Reagan used the same slogan. Ronald Reagan's politics were so different than Donald Trump's, but he's using the same slogan, using it differently. Obama used the slogan, yes, we can. And now I see Donald Trump is using the same slogan as Obama, but against him. And but it's branding. That's what it is. Coffee breaks were introduced 1952. The Pan American Coffee Bureau really created the coffee break, and which is very much a part of what we do and what we experience every day. But it's branding. It came out in 1952 when they introduced that ad. Volkswagen, the Beetle, when it came out here, when they first brought the Beetle to North America in 1955, small, thinking small. Small is big. And this was the ad that they showed. It was a very, very large canvas with a very, very tiny little car. And Just Do It, Nike's ads. It's a brand. It's a way of selling the product. And in a sense, you have to sell your product to the media. Otherwise, they're going to turn around and cover something else. And this was my favorite one was Steve Jobs. When he introduced this at Super Bowl. Steve Jobs was a master at branding, was a master at selling the product. And I mean, the computer almost didn't turn on at the event that he had for it, but they had already run this ad. He had spent a fortune buying this ad during Super Bowl. Millions of people saw this ad. And people came out in droves. People wanted the Macintosh before they even knew what it was. He had the attention of the entire world with this. And yet, the computer almost didn't work at the Big Apple event. Your brand, that's what it is. Think about what your brand is. Think about what you're selling, what image you're selling. It's not necessarily a situation where you create an actual image, but it's to create an image in the mind of the media, that you stand for something. This is poetry at the Manor. I've been doing this for 3 years, and it's a kind of brand. You know, every fall we bring in poets laureate from across the country. We tell our audiences that we're going to bring in major poets from all across the country to read at Willisted. It's a great venue for readings. It's a great place for poetry. And we have a huge crowd. And we have great readings. And now it's becoming an annual event. And as poet laureate, this is part of what I do. But you know, when I leave that job as poet laureate, hopefully someone will carry it on at Poetry at the Manor. But it's a kind of brand. Bookfest is something that's been going on for years in Windsor. People expect authors of international reputation, national reputation to be here to entertain audiences. They expect a certain quality. Windsor International Film Festival, people expect year after year to have a certain quality of films. When they see that logo, they recognize it. And Vanessa Shields more recently has started Mouthpiece, which is a storytelling entertainment where she brings people together, people from the general population, to get up and tell their stories and share their stories. And it's becoming an event that's very, very popular. Again, it's all about branding. People expect when they go to this event, they anticipate they're going to be entertained. They're going to come away with something interesting and important. So some of the factors that I'm going to talk about are a media plan, press release, a press conference, and word of mouth or social media. So in terms of a media plan, it's knowing what your target audience is and finding the brand, the story, which I've really just spoken about. If you can find what that story is, the story behind the story. So you need to sit down with a team of people and say, okay, so what are we all about? What do we represent? How are we different from other organizations in Windsor? And what can we offer? And when you start answering those questions, you'll figure out kind of what your target market is. And you need to brainstorm this. And the more items you put down, the better it will be for you. You need to understand what your timing is. So, I remember we used to get calls when I was at the Windsor Star and working in entertainment. I'd get calls from the English department at the university and saying, we have an author coming into town today, at 2 o'clock. Well, sorry, we're not covering it because we've already got our agenda. Who's coming? Why do we hear about this just right now? We should have heard about this 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, a month ago. We should have put it in our calendar. Or getting a call after the fact. The person has been here. When was that? Last week. That's old news. We want news. And that's the whole concept of news, is that it's new. That it's happening or going to happen right now. Again, I reiterate, is knowing your media, knowing what they would be interested in, and pitching that. What is there about your event that you're going to be holding that will bring the media to that event and cover it. It may be the personality behind it. It may be a story related to that person that has nothing to do with the entertainment part of it. It may be more personal. It may be someone who's associated with that person. You never know what it can be, but you need to dig a little deeper and find out what that is. And as a person who's been working in the media for years, when I've gone to cover events, entertainment events, I'm always looking for a different kind of story. I've been given a press kit, been given all the biographical information, I've been given the press release, but I'm thinking everybody can get that. I want something a little different. So what can I get out of this? And usually it means asking a lot of questions. This is from the media point of view. Now, I turn it around and say to you, you pretend that you're in the media. You start asking all of those questions. And then you will find that there is another story that can be told. And you keep pitching those stories until something raises an eyebrow and the editor or the reporter says, oh, I'd be interested in that. I'd be interested in that. I remember when they were talking about the closing of the Windsor Arena, and someone was asking me about that, and I said, well, you should talk to my wife whose family used to own the Windsor Arena. And they thought, well, that would be interesting. And then I said, well, you should talk to her about her father who was in the circus, in the aerial acts in the circus. And suddenly, an eyebrow went up and said, that's different. That's interesting. I want to know more about that. That's a little different. That's unique. No one else is going to have that. The other thing it involves is teamwork. I go back to brainstorming. Brainstorm your event. Look for strategies that can convince Dawson Chen from the Windsor Star, or Tony Doucette, or Bob Steele from CBC to come out and cover this event, to publicize this event for you. So those are four things: target market, timing, knowing the media, and teamwork and strategies. And that's your media plan, basically. So working with the media, these are some tips. First of all, be available. I mean, that sounds like should be obvious, but I've seen press releases that are completely without any phone numbers, or maybe just an email address. Well, I can tell you right now, the media is frustrated with email addresses. It's because, think about it. If I send you an email, you have a choice of either not answering it, or answering it, or ignoring it. And I'll never know, unless you answer it. But if I call you, and you answer the phone, I have you on the phone. You can say to me, you're busy, but at least now we're talking one-to-one. So be available, and I'll talk about press releases in a minute, but the idea is to be available and provide hours when you will be around and when you can be reached. I was in France recently, and Bob Steele was trying to reach me about A-bars closing on the river, and I've written so much about Windsor's past, and I answered him from France. I called him right back and I said, I'm in France, so I really don't want to spend a lot of time on my cell phone. He said, no problem, when you get back, we'll get you in the studio. And I went in. The other thing with the media is to be respectful and be grateful, but whatever you do, never ever give the media the feeling that they're doing you a favor. Never give them that feeling. You must give the media the feeling that you have something special, that you're doing them a favor, that they are going to get you exclusively for an interview, and they should be thankful. I don't mean for you to be arrogant. As I say, be grateful and be respectful, but confide in them. Say, well, I could tell you this story. I haven't told this to anyone else, but you're lucky to get me right now, basically, is what you want to give that feeling. You don't want to say that. Have a good voice. Whoever represents you, make sure that they have a good voice, have a good presence, that they're talkative, that they have they have a little bit of humor. They're relaxed. They're ready to share a story. They're not reticent at all, and they're very engaged. You know, and that's what you want. You want that kind of presence. And if you look back at the when Peter Mansbridge was interviewing the three leaders during the federal debates, you see Stephen Harper sitting like this, almost as if he wants to look at his watch to see what time this is going to be over. You see Mulcair looking very, very big and large and arrogant. And then you see, and they're all, the two leaders are sitting with their backs against the chair. You see Justin Trudeau on the edge of his seat, leaning forward with Peter Mansbridge. He's engaged, and that's what you want to be. You want to be engaged. You want to be interested. And when you tell a story, think visually. If you think visually, you can paint pictures in the minds of your listeners and in the minds of your readers, and certainly in the minds of the person doing the interview. And provide anecdotes that really work for for your story. Because people are going to carry those anecdotes with them. They're going to remember those anecdotes before they ever remember any facts and figures. And the other thing is, plan what you're going to say. Always plan that ahead of time. And no matter what the questions are from the interviewer, let's face it, the interviewer really wants you to be entertaining. The interviewer really wants you to make this a terrific interview. It makes him or her look so much better. So they don't really care what you say. They just want you to be interesting. So plan what you're going to say, and no matter what the question is, you can always say, that's a really interesting question, but it really skirts what I really want to say, which is, and then you fire out what you want to say. And that's just it's an old trick that Paul Martin Sr. taught me years ago. Practice. Always practice what you're going to be saying. The press kit. Press kit is really just a collection of materials for the media. It's either provided by someone on your staff, or you can hire a public relations agency to do this. It should contain items designed to enhance the image of your event. If you have an author coming into town, is to enhance, is to provide information about that author or whatever the event is. And I'll give you some details about it. Oh, hang on. The press conference. What you want to do with a press conference is, first of all, I'm not sure whether you need a press conference, but if you are going to have a press conference, make it an event. Make it something spectacular. Have a reason for people to come out to it. I'll give you an example. At the University of Windsor 2 years ago, I was teaching a course in the digital journalism program, and one of the things that we do is we make a short documentary film every year. And last year we did poverty. 2 years ago we did multiculturalism. So for the event, I want people in the city to know that we were doing this. So what did I do? I went to the News Cafe at the Windsor Star, and I invited Mayor Drew Dilkins. I had 3 MPs. I had a number of other city officials all get up at this press conference and talk about how multiculturalism was such a factor in Windsor, the 4th most diverse city in the country. So I had major political figures at this, and people working in the social agencies getting up and talking about this and how important it was. And that way I drew attention to what I needed, which was to get the word out. And I got the word out, and we made the documentary film. But I knew I had to make it an event. I couldn't just simply stand up there with half a dozen students and say, we need your stories. This had far more impact. So make it an event. Keep the message simple. My message was simple. It was, we need your stories. When I walk down Willett Avenue, I see white faces, and yet we're supposed to be the 4th most diverse city in the country. I wouldn't know that by walking down Willett Avenue. And that was my message. And people had to go about proving that. Stage it. I staged it with personalities. I put on a show. And so if you're going to have a press conference, don't be putting it on just simply to give out information. Put it on and make it entertainment is what you want to do. Word of mouth is, using social media. What you want to do is to make sure that you get the word out through all the various devices that you can. People are, wherever they are connected with their phone. They're walking with this phone in their hand all the time. So you need to connect with them. I saw a great picture the other day with a man and a woman embracing, at a airport. And the man's got his arms around the woman like this, and he's got the phone in his hand, and he's looking over her shoulder like this because he's seeing a message. That's the world that we live in. So take advantage of that world. Make sure they get your message. Tweet them, get them on Facebook, whatever media that you can use, you want to use it. But word of mouth is really important too. If you have an event that's happening, think about the people that you know that's associated with that event, and just say to them. And I do this every year when we launch books in the spring, and we get 300 to 400 people out at our events. And I basically look at the individuals and the students who are working in my editing and publishing class, and I say, each of you, and I got 24, 27 students, each of you has to bring 10 people to this event. And they do. And they fill the place. I don't care who comes. I want to fill the place and sell books. And they come and they buy books. We sell $3,000 worth of books almost at every one of these events. It's one shot that I have at a big crowd, and we get them out. And we do it by word of mouth. Literally, people saying, hey, come to this event. We give postcards to the students. We give them to other individuals. I carry them in my coat pocket, and when I go to other events, I pull these postcards out and I say, hey, next Thursday, what are you doing? Come to this event. That is so much more valuable than running an ad, because now it's you face-to-face with someone and saying, come to my event. I think you'd find this interesting. So word of mouth is really, really important. Social media, good old-fashioned invitations is another way of doing it. Telephone, texting, all of these, important. Okay, the press kit. I want to talk about the press kit because this is kind of important. It should contain these elements. Number one is a press release, and I'm going to tell you a little bit more about the press release and some of these other things. You want something that's about the event, about the book that you're promoting, about your individual organization. You don't want an essay. You just want a summary. You want something about the participants. Who's performing, who's written this book, who's going to be delivering this essay tonight, and how this information relates to the event. You want a brief Q&A, 2 pages tops, and you want a page of quotes. And I'll tell you a little bit more about it. You want clippings and reviews. And you want a fact sheet. You want a page about the organization. You want contact information. You want a release date, when this is going to happen. You want photographs and graphics. You want promotional hooks for them. You want all of this in your press kit. All designed to help the reporter get the story. And it's really important. Let me tell you a little bit about press kits. There are basically 2 or 3 kinds of reporters. One is the lazy reporter, one is the dutiful reporter, and one is the reporter who digs. Okay, the lazy reporter loves a press kit because the press kit will provide them quotes, biographical information. The press, this is the first time maybe that you will certainly permit, you pray for it if you're putting together the press kit. You're praying that the reporter plagiarizes your press release, because in your press release you have all the information you want the public to know. I talked to a guy from Ford Motor Company. He said, we pray that the media will just completely and totally plagiarize our press release. It's designed for that. The lazy reporter will do that. The lazy reporter doesn't care whether you put the phone number at the bottom of the press release. because he's got colorful quotes, he's got the lead, he's got everything that he wants. The dutiful reporter will go through all of this material and still want to find their own quotes. We'll use some of these quotes, and we'll use the lead possibly, maybe change this slightly. We'll have all the information that he or she needs, but we'll make that phone call, and maybe even make an extra phone call. And basically, that reporter's done their job. The reporter who digs a little deeper, and I always found myself in that situation, is where I'm looking for something in the press kit that will send me in a different direction, and I will get a slightly different story. But all of that information has to be there. So the press release, it should tell a story. Get out the details. It should get attention. You need a strong lead. So, writing the press release, think like a journalist. Is what you're saying newsworthy, or are you simply advertising the event? Think in terms of events, in terms of personalities, something unique, again, something unusual, something different. So the most commonly used means of communication between public relations people and the media generally consists of a page or more. The press release shouldn't be any more than a page. That's all you really need. So the press release should have a headline, and sometimes some newspapers will just copy the headline and use it. The opening paragraph shouldn't be any more than 25 words. It should be short sentences. Focus on the news. Colorful quotes. I'm hugely a great fan of colorful quotes. Quotes that will really jump off the page, that you will remember. As I say, the source, it should be in the upper left corner, double space the reliefs, so editors and reporters can make their notes in between those lines. That's why you double space them, because they might call you and say, you said the following, and then they can write right on the press release itself. So, something about the event, the person, the thing. Briefly state the story. If it's a book, what's the plot? What's the book about? What's this event about? If it's a dance recital or it's the Windsor Symphony, what are they playing? And you want to put it in terms that the general public can understand, and not in esoteric terms, not in elitist terms. You want to put it in such a way that anyone with elementary school education can understand. And also identify the audience for whom this is intended. And that's important. Again, it's knowing your target market. And provide an evaluation on how this event with its participants fit in with the entertainment of this kind. So where does it sit? Again, this is where your organization, you're wanting people to cover your organization and your event before they cover anyone else's. Because you're going to compete with other venues and other entertainment outlets that are going on in the city. All right. Something about the artist. You want some brief biographical information. There may be something in that biographical information that will bring somebody out. Like, for example, if maybe, like for example, I was in Aurelia at the Stephen Leacock Museum at the festival, and someone from Windsor was going to be there. So it immediately got my attention. So I thought, oh, this is interesting, I made a point of going and introducing myself because I'm from Windsor. And so that might bring me out to an event. You may have been living in Windsor for 25 years, but you're from Thamesville, or you're from Toronto, or you're from Hamilton, and there's an artist that you remember as a child who performed at the Opera House and in another city, and you think, wow, I'm going to go out because I remember my mom used to go and hear her, so I'm going to go out and see that event or experience that event in Windsor. So a brief biographical information, and how this artist is regarded by others. What are other people saying about this person? And the school or tradition that this artist is associated with. That's sometimes important. Again, you only need one page for this. A Q&A with the author. You can ask a lot of why questions and how questions. You're going to get good answers. Why did you choose this career? They may say, well, when I was 4 years old, my mother traumatized me and put me on stage. But I loved it, and ever since. I mean, John Wing, who's an author and a comedian, he said he got up at a comedy club, scared out of his mind, got up and told a few jokes, and everyone was laughing, and he said he's been stung ever since. This keeps bringing him back to that one moment. So that little detail, that little bit of information is what you get by asking, well, why did you choose this career? So these questions, why did you take this approach, or what are your influences? Who have you read? Why is this event important to you? Why should I, if it's a poetry event, well, why should I care about poetry? It's interesting when you ask that of a poet. And it's interesting what they will tell you. Or why should I care about classical music? Why should I sit through and fall asleep during, a performance? And you get the artist answering that and saying, I'll tell you a different approach that you can take. And I'll tell you, if you come to this concert, you won't be sleeping. You'll be awake, and you'll love it, and you'll go away happy. And this is what you want the author or the musician or the artist to say. You need a fact sheet sometimes. Just quick, easy facts for the media to scoop up. Because when they're sorting through all of this and they're writing it, they don't want to go looking to find out when your organization was founded. They think, well, they're writing about Bookfest. I'm thinking, okay, I hesitated a little bit when I mentioned Bookfest earlier, because I don't remember. I remember when it started, but I don't remember the date. I don't know how many years it's been going, but if I were writing about it, I might say this is the 10th year, 15th year, 20th year. That should be in your fact sheet. So if you represent an organization, that kind of information should be there. Statistical and factual material, birthplace, the age of the artist or the author, bibliographical details, sales figures, how many books this person has sold. This is all important. A checklist of biographical facts, a list of the accomplishments of the author or the musician, involvement in the community, awards, views on that genre, what other people are saying, and quotes or endorsements, quotes from previous appearances, and endorsements from professionals. Again, awards are important. It kind of validates, you going and hearing that particular artist. Clippings, stories, reviews. This is all important for the media, because they can dig back into a review that was 4 years ago and say that when this artist performed for the Detroit Symphony, or when this artist was in Europe, they played in front of thousands of people. You want that information to get into your story, because it just enhances and enriches the experience, and hopefully will get people out to your event. So clippings, stories, reviews, all of that's important. Online stories or features about that personality are important as well. I think that if you can use that. The assembly of the press kit is really important. And basically you can just use a folder that has 2 little pockets in them. The press release itself will go on the right facing side, and it's right there and it'll have a headline on it, headlining whatever you're trying to sell, whatever the story is, and it's the first item. And so, you know, on the right pocket you go on the press release, something about the individual, the personality, something about the event, something about like a fact sheet and a quote sheet. Everything else goes in the left pocket. You know, for example, the Q&A that you do would be in the left pocket. The Q&A is really important because the Q&A gives the lazy reporter an opportunity to read some of the quotes and grab those quotes and use them. And you also, if you can, you do include a photograph. And maybe, and you know, if it's a book that you're promoting, excerpts. You know, maybe just a you know, half a dozen pages of poetry or an excerpt from their novel. Or and the other thing to do is include a USB key. You want a USB key that has all of that information on it. Everything in the press kit that you have will be on the USB key. And you want to put it in Microsoft Word, not some crazy, obscure Word program that you have, but Microsoft Word. All right? So that's the assembly of the press kit. Very, very important. All right. This just gives you some examples of some of the press kits we put together. And well, we did one of Marianne Mulhern's book, and we did one of John B. Lee's. His book is in the top left-hand corner, and it's called Dress for Dead Uncles. And it's a book where, and so what we did was we basically put together a tie and a suit jacket. John tells a story about how he always inherited the clothes from his uncles who died. And if he ever bought any new clothes and he showed up somewhere with someone and said, "Oh, I'm sorry for your loss." You know, assembly of the press kits. This is just a little video. It's about promoting a book and the pitfalls behind it.
Yeah, I know. The new cover looks great. No, Oprah hasn't called yet. You know what's funny about the Oprah question? I would have just called you and said I'm going to be on Oprah. I wouldn't have let you come to me. No, it's not going to happen. There's other ways to get people to know about books. Well, with the paperback, it's a little different because it's not new, even though it's a new edition. No reviews. Nobody reviews paperback. Well, when the Times does that, it's because they reviewed it in hardcover and they want to remind you of it because they liked it. No, the Times never reviewed my book. They didn't even not like it. No tour. I could put myself on tour, but I'm not going to. Yeah, exactly. I'm more going to focus on radio and no, I don't have anything booked. What am I doing? Yes, that is the question. Book club. Yeah, my neighbor is having her book club read the book, and then my neighbor. I'm also going to do a big email blast. That book I wrote a year ago is out again. Just send that to everybody. Select all. No, I never did a website. No, I know. You need to have a website. I know everything has a website. You're right. I don't. Well, I have my blog. So it's blog. Yeah, just the free one. I've kind of neglected it. I'm guessing that nobody reads it. But I did read it on it recently. I guess I just kind of picked a new template and then a dark or something. It's one of the minimalists. What are those? Oh, you mean like those little buttons? There's like dig and Reddit. There's one that looks like the word delicious, but it's got a bunch of dots in it. Oh, it is delicious. Okay, well, it sounds like I need a new website and a new blog. Right, with those things. Right. Well, I guess technically I'm on MySpace and I have an account. No, I don't have anything for the book on that, just me. Yeah, I just have the one friend. Yeah, the guy in the t-shirt. Well, I'm on Facebook. No, I didn't know you could do that. So you can just do that with the book? My book can have a Facebook page? Oh, I didn't know that. I thought you needed to have something with a face. So what else? Is that thing with the where people go online and like make clothes and swords and stuff like that, and to get Second Life, build avatar, friends, and I just post the reading, right? Twitter. What Twitter's? I guess I could do that on my phone in the car. Anything else while we're jamming this out? YouTube, of course. Because you know that's the dream, right? 20 years ago when I wanted to become a writer, a big part of the dream was being able to put little videos on the internet. That's it. That's why we do this. And maybe I'll just stop writing. I'll just do downloads and apps and widgets. And hey, I just had an idea. I'm going to write a hit song, and I'm going to get it on Guitar Hero 4. That might help. I'm sorry. You are not the bad guy in this. That is true. No, I am grateful. I mean, I wrote a book. It got published. I know. This is the world we live in. I'm going to get it together. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it today. Today. Yes. I am smiling. I will work on my smile. You are like a guru to me. All right, thanks a lot. No, I really do appreciate it.
Well, and that finishes the formal part of my presentation. Well, I still think I go back to, if your story is important, or if you can make it sound important, they will cover it. I'm actually an optimist when it comes to what's happening in the industry, and I may be one of the few optimists. And the reason why is because people will always want news. They're going to get it somewhere. I think we're in a situation where the media is evolving, and I don't think they can see the future. But I look at the Windsor Star, for example, and they are a far more competitive media product than they ever were. And they're competitive now in the sense that when something actually happens, it doesn't matter where it happens in the city, they'll find some way of getting it online. So they're covering it online. And my phone dings all day long with news that's coming from the Windsor Star. The Windsor Star was never able to do that, 20 years ago. 20 years ago, the Windsor Star, like so many newspapers, sat back and said, well, we'll give you a far more reflective coverage of the news. Yes, you can get it on radio instantly. You can get it on TV instantly. But you're not going to get a lot of it. You're not going to get the full story. We're going to give you the full story, along with maybe a column that's been written, pros and cons about that event or that issue. Now they're actually competitive, and with fewer people, and it's unfortunate. But I think, you have to be, in the media or in the arts organizations, you have to be competitive as well. And I understand the dilemma that you face, and the dilemma is, like, how do we get our event covered when they have fewer people working? I think you need to tell the story better. I think you need to give the media the point of view that they have to cover your event. They have to, because it's important. And it is important. And you just have to be able to tell it better than the next person. So, but I'm an optimist. I just think that we're in this period of time, we're evolving, and I look ahead at 10 to 15 years from now, we're going to have a different product that's out there, a different way of covering the news. People said, when radio came along, that would be the end of newspapers. It wasn't. And when television came along, they said it would be the end of radio and newspapers, and it wasn't. I don't know what the product will be 10 years from now. I have no idea. But I know there will be a product, and there will be some way of conveying the news.
It's encouraging to hear. Thank you.
We're a far more grounded audience, meaning that, I'll give you an example. This happened quite a few years ago, but Dwight Bennett was the conductor of the Windsor Symphony. And just before he departed Windsor, he introduced something at concerts. And I was covering the classics concerts. And he introduced to the audiences what they should be listening to, or what they could be listening to. And he would just give them like a 5-minute point of view on different sounds that they were going to hear, and what to listen for. And I think That would never happen in Toronto. That would never happen with the Toronto Symphony. But it happened here in Windsor, and it's not that the Windsor audiences are less sophisticated, but we're a little more grounded, and we want to hear this, and it helps. And I think we love storytelling, and we love to hear about our city, and so that's part of your market. That's part of what we should be selling, to Windsor audiences. And I think if you understood that market, then a book like the Rum Runners that I wrote, that hit a nerve. That hit something in the city that spawned sales of 40,000 copies as a bestseller. And yet you think, well, why didn't someone write that before? It's because someone didn't understand what the market was. And so I think it's just understanding that and digging a little deeper, trying to find out what people want to hear, what people want you to perform for them. Well, it depends what you're wanting to do. If you're wanting to get someone to cover your event, you have to cater to the media. If you want someone to, at the same time, while you're catering to the media to do that, word of mouth, you're catering to your audience. You see what I'm saying? So on the social network, you're going to be sending them messages that would cater to that particular audience. With the media, you have to excite them to get them to cover your event or to write about your event. So there's like two different streams that are going on. They result in the same. They could result in the same thing, which is to get people to come out to your event.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.